Okay, thank you for setting us up there, Anthony. We wanted to address the Workpapers product in its own session because the Workpapers product, it's a biggie, it's a whopper. That's not how we market it, oddly enough. But Anthony, that's an idea for you if you want to. But it's the tool that will house all your documentation to support all of your reports. And it's the tool that could drive efficiencies or it could hinder efficiencies. So it really is a critical product, a critical topic, and that's why we wanted to get some of our firms, as we said earlier, firms who are in different stages of their journey using the product and licensing the product, to give you some insights, because hopefully, whether you are already a Workpapers adopter or you're just thinking about it, there's somebody on the panel here ahead of you in that journey as a long-term user or a recent evaluator that you could learn a little bit from, and you could see into the future as to what your journey could look like, and take some tips from them as someone who's been through it. So I've got a terrific panel with me today, so I'll start by saying a big thank you. And I'll turn it over to our panelists to do quick introductions, and then we'll get into some questions. So if you want to go first, David.
Yeah, as you can see on the screen, I'm David Cox, Head of Audit at Hayes Mack.
Caroline Monk, Executive Partner at Beaver and Struthers.
Hi, Alistair Main, and I'm Head of Audit at Duncan and Topless.
Fantastic. And what I'm going to do, I've got some questions. I'm going to direct them to the panelists based on where they are in their journey. But obviously jump in if you want to jump in on anyone else's questions. But if it's all right with each of you, we'll start with where you are on the journey. So if you want to start off on where's your firm in your Workpapers journey?
So we adopted Workpapers, probably I think the first of the three panelists for December 22 year end. So we're now in our third year.
So mature usage, and then
you might say that.
Mature, very good. Caroline?
I guess we're the immature usage then, in that we are starting out in our adoption of the Workpapers, though that's rather embarrassing when Mark points about when they started the idea of inflow in the coffee shop in Newcastle in 2015. And I think we first met you in 2016 and kind of got the product then. But, it takes time.
It's a whopper, so,
Yeah, very similar to Caroline, actually. We've been using Inflow, Data Analytics and the Collaborate for probably 8-9 years. Workpapers-wise, we went live with our trial teams in October last year and fully live for all December 24 year ends onwards for the whole team.
Excellent. So what I'm going to start with is my questions more towards Alistair, Caroline, as the more recent adopters, and then David, come to you at the end. So Caroline, if I can start with you. First question here is, if you can set the scene on how long were you using your previous software for, and what sort of software was it? Is it the 90s, the Inflow 90s example?
Mark's answered that, hasn't
he?
Because we've already seen, haven't we? We were on the 1991 software. It might not surprise, we weren't early adopters onto that one either. So we went onto that one. It was before my time with the firm, so it must have been late 90s, I think. Right there, and that's where we've stayed.
The good 90s floppy disk drive with the file room.
All of that.
Yeah. And Alistair, same question to you, similar?
Yeah, so we've been using a Caseware Desktop since, I think it was about 2006-07, so good 15, 16 years.
Yeah, and I know that pain as well. I was actually an auditor for 18 years before joining Inflow. I lived the same 90s experience as you as well. So what was it then, Caroline, to question another one to you, what was it that did prompt you to explore something new, and what really prompted the change?
Well, it's so multifaceted, isn't it? And there's lots of things that add up to it. So the cliched one would be, again, as Mark talked about, coming out of legacy server based onto cloud. But that's kind of old hat, really, in all sorts of ways. I think it was more about the realization that we'd spent so much time and effort into looking at how we did the audits differently in terms of capturing the data, capturing the information, thinking about what people were doing, and then we were trying to shoehorn that into the same process. As ultimately we talk about audit automation and that coming through in 91, but actually that didn't change anything from way back before. It just created an electronic file to hold the same information, and the everything looked very similar to how it did when I started, which I think was probably before anyone else in this panel started. And I think it was a realisation that standards are changing. You know, our requirements are changing. I'm staring at my compliance director, which is really scary. Actually, this is the worst possible place for me to be sitting. But everything is changing in what's required out of the audit, and we're trying to shoehorn this into something that still sits the same. So we're finding, how do we work around that? How do we work around this? And actually, the thing was not to work around, but start afresh.
Yeah, so the outcome that you were seeking was to find a tool that you didn't have to work around and make work.
Absolutely.
A tool that
it
works
would
the
work
way you wanted
for
to.
what we're trying to do today.
That's it. Okay, excellent. One more, I'm going to stay keeping you on the spot, Caroline, if that's all right. But so you were an existing inflow customer of other products. And did that influence your decision with the Workpapers and how you adopted and how you integrated with the Workpapers product?
I'm certain it did. And again, I do remember Mark having a phone call with me probably 5 years back, and it was like, what if there was this product? And clearly, by the time you finished the conversation, it was like, never mind what if, we want that product sort of conversation, isn't it? But no, I mean, obviously you do have to look at alternatives, because that's the right thing to do. But again, I'm just sounding like what Mark said. You need to change your name to Simon. So it's what Simon said. But there aren't that many alternatives, are there? And that's the reality of it. So yeah.
Excellent. Alistair, I'm going to pick on you with a few questions and trying to move us sort of through the journey. So obviously we talked about the evaluation process, and then but you've your early days. But so far, what sort of, have there been any business improvements or process improvements that you've seen just from your initial reactions and initial usage of the Workpapers product?
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things really. I mean, one of my team's actual feedback on the product, and there's actually a reason why she didn't like it, but I took it as a real positive. Well, I don't like it because it's making me think about what I'm doing, which I was like, well, hang on a minute, that's what we want you to do, but that's really driving some of our audit where we're already seeing that actually people are naturally questioning why did we do this previously? Can't we do it this way instead? There's a better way of doing this, and we're really pleased that in a few months we're already getting those questions, and actually it's leading to. So I think Mark, you said earlier about, in the UK market, we already had use of the data analytics products. I think we did, but we were stuck really with the revenue analyzer and the kind of detect module. We couldn't really shoehorn the rest of the modules in. But what we're seeing is we want to move to using all the modules, but actually our team are just going, I can see that when they're using it, and we can see that in the data we're getting. Like, we're not asking them to, but they're starting to use all the other modules.
Mm-hmm. And do you find that the thinking, engaging the brain, is actually leading to better quality and efficiency outcomes as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for my trial audits, with the way we did them, we essentially took our old audit work on our desktop version, and we kind of did the work and then tried to see where it went in inflow. And we were left with these pile of audit tests, and people were going, well, where do I put these? And, well, the question you need to ask there is, why are we doing those? And the answer was basically we didn't need to do most of those that they had done because they didn't have a home.
Does that, with David and Caroline, does that resonate with
the quote, it makes me think, is absolutely come out, but interestingly it's come out as a real positive that, I think, if I look lower down in the audit train, they really like that thing of it makes us think.
Yeah, I mean, our audit methodology was similar to most other firms, just did what we did last year most of the time, right? So this was a real challenge for us when we adopted, is that, how do we do what we did last year? And we let teams basically do that in the first year because we just needed them to adopt the platform. Okay, and then, of course, but then that creates huge inefficiencies. And as Alistair said, you have this opportunity to go, I'll have a little play with Explore, or I might do a bit of Cascade, and then suddenly everyone's using it, which is great, but then you've got a lot of work being done that actually you won't really need, probably. Yeah. You're doing too much work. Okay. And it's one of those things that we're trying to look at now, is like, we're doing too much work. How can we do just enough?
Okay. So you would say that there's efficiencies initially, but it's a multi-year thing. The efficiencies keep coming year after year after you continue to think, engage your brain. You're seeing that more and more?
Yeah, I think we started off being inefficient, probably. I mean, we adopted in 22, which was deliberate because we had we had a sort of software which we'd had for 15 years and we developed ourselves. It wasn't quite as 1991, but it looked like it was. And it was broken. It couldn't adopt ISO 315FI, so we needed something else. We were very much, that's why we adopted early, effectively. And now that standard itself created lots of work, right? So we had a lot of work in that first year. Some of it is just developing an understanding of how the platform works. Some of it was ISO 315. But in our now sort of second and third year, we're now going, right, okay, so where are we being inefficient? Can now we identify how much work we need to do on each audit and then cut out tests that we don't need to do?
Yeah. Well, so you did a nice big chunky standard change and a software change at the same time.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
that
it was
good.
It was pretty intense.
Good
yeah.
combo. Good combo. Alistair, I'll come back to you, and I want to be transparent in the conversation. Let's talk not just about the benefits, but the challenges. So, as part of your implementation, any challenges that you'd want other people to be aware of going in and eyes wide open?
Yeah, it is a huge change. It is changing how we are auditing, and I think that change management with the team, I can't kind of overestimate the importance of taking that time and actually bringing them all along on that journey. I think we are fortunate in that one of the biggest challenges we've had from the team has been around having to plan the group from kind of top down, because some of our clients don't really work that way. But actually the timing we've done it with ISO 600, it's enabled us to turn around and essentially say, well, you haven't actually got a choice in doing it that way, because that's what the ISO is driving you to do it. But I can see if this had been 6-8 months ago, doing it that way would have been a bigger challenge for some of our team members.
So in terms of stakeholder or team member resistance, obviously there's one specific example there as it relates to group audits, but other than saying, hey, standards make you do it this way, do you have any tips for people to kind of get stakeholder buy-in and get user implementation and excitement from an early stage?
Yeah, I think I say bring them along on the journey. We've been talking about this. We looked at Workpapers probably 4 years ago with a small team, and at the time said it wasn't quite ready for what we wanted to use, but we've kept that engagement. And in the trial process, we've been very clear with our rest of our director group all the way down throughout the various levels in the business of what we're doing and why we're doing it. And we've been candid about the results we've shared, both the good things and the bad things out of the trials, and actually made sure everybody wasn't just seeing this as they just want to change software because they want something new, actually seeing there's genuine benefits here, why it's good for everyone in the business, and actually seeing that we actually put some thought process into this. It's not just a random choice.
Yeah. And that's one of the things I hear most commonly with firms making such a whopper of a decision is you've got to have the people on the bus, for want of a cliche. But it's certainly getting that stakeholder buy-in through involvement is the common thread that I hear that goes well. But I'm going to give you one more before we talk maybe a bit more about more mature usage. The last one, Alistair, I wanted to ask you was for your implementation journey. What did that look like? What kind of support, resources, what went well to make sure that the implementation was designed appropriately?
So we really liked the way the trial was run with your team, essentially. So we were, we watched the videos, we learned the basics of the software, but then we went through a process of, we would start doing the planning and we'd end up with a load of questions and we'd go back to David, I think it was up there somewhere, to say, actually, how do we do all this? What's this? What do we do with this? And that really worked. So we've almost tried to expand that out into a larger scale when we've adopted it across the team. So the original group that went through the training did have David again in the training session, but then we've kind of upskilled a lot of our champions in the business to do that for us. So they've joined in with teams. So they've kind of gone, the team, do the planning. You're going to have questions. We'll come and sit with you for half a day or whatever and go through them with you to try and replicate that. And that's really worked quite well.
Excellent. I couldn't have scripted that answer any better, because you've touched on two things that I think we've found work well across a number of firms, which is we do have some really great experts. David is a terrific expert and has got a team, as well as the use of champions, internal champions as well, really does help drive the project from the inside, and it helps the speed of adoption as well. So I give you £5 later because you really hit the nail on the head with that one. But I'm going to pick on you, if I may, with a few more questions. Now we talk about, like I said, mature usage. So in terms of process changes and also configurations, have you done any internal process changes or configurations that help you have helped as a firm to adopt the the Workpapers product?
Not really.
No? Okay.
We didn't say earlier, but we've been using Inflow now for probably 7-8 years and stuff. So all the various different products. So a lot of the audit stuff that we do, we're already using Inflow, and therefore we didn't have to change too much. We use Caseware for accounts preparation, and so but we don't integrate into Inflow with that. We had to. We use Data Snipper as well, and we had to configure that with our own SharePoint site to make sure that we could use the full Excel functionality of all that. So we had to do a little bit of work around that, but otherwise not so much.
Yeah, excellent. And from your journey so far, is there anything that has been a standout efficiency or a standout most impactful item on either efficiency or audit quality? What would you say has been impacted the most?
Yeah, as I said, we sort of adopted in 22, so that was that big change to the whole risk assessment stuff. And actually, we were trying to do that actually through a spreadsheet back in our old system, and it was like, well, this is not going to work. And so actually, the risk and response stuff, being able to take or use the technology to actually import the numbers, actually tailor our audits to the bigger numbers, for example, take stuff out of scope, properly do risk and response. I mean, that's definitely, it's efficient, a way to do it, but it's definitely improved audit quality as well.
Excellent. Big time on quality. What about you from a longer term usage perspective? When I asked the question earlier about challenges, what have you seen in the longer term usage that there's been a challenge that you've had to overcome as a team? Anything stand out to you as a big challenge?
Yeah, I mean, Alistair's right. Of course, the groups is difficult. And we have the same experience, really. Clients and the way that we did group audits wasn't the same way as to be blunt, how Inflow expected us to do it. So, and then clients to do it. So, we've had quite a great collaboration with your guys over the years to go, right, well, in our real world, this is how we do group audits. Now, we might not be doing group audits right. And so you tell us how you think we should be doing group audits well, and then maybe we'll meet somewhere in the middle, which is, I think, where we got to. So, so that's definitely been a challenge, and that has definitely introduced quite a lot of extra inefficiencies probably around that. But as I said, apart from that, there's huge amounts of improvements in the qualities. We've been lucky enough to have a few successful AQR and QAD reviews recently, which again have all passed. So that, again, from a quality point of view, that's a tick in the box, right? So
yep.
Yeah.
So you've just touched on something about the collaborative effort to continually iterate and improve, and that is definitely a philosophy we've always taken at Inflow and always continue to, and to improve the product. And you said the way you thought you wanted to do it, you kind of moved on that a little bit. And Caroline, at lunch, you had a statement that I think you said your recommendation to your team is what is it you said?
Oh, which one? I say too many things to remember.
Well, it was along the lines of
do what you're told.
Do what you're told. Yeah.
Yes, that was one. Yes, do what you're told.
Yeah.
I think. I'm sure we're not the only firm that we listen to your great team saying this is how we recommend you implement it. This is what we think, and it's like, well, that's fine, but we're different, and for us, it needs to be different. We need to do it like that. And my advice to anyone else who's not yet started is cut that off at the first opportunity. And shut your team up and make them do as they're told.
and I didn't lean towards that to get people not to challenge us. But what my point there is more around, well, one, I do that with my wife, and I've got a very happy life because I do what I'm told. But
there's been reference to group audits already, and I would echo that. But you might think, why on earth can we echo an experience on group audits when we're still in the immature stage? And that's because, despite your very clear instructions of what to put in the pilot or not, we put in groups, and not only groups, but groups with 25 subsidiaries. And you know what? It was a bit of a challenge.
Yeah.
Well, who knows?
Yeah. Well, we definitely are challenges, and we always love the feedback. We don't just expect everyone to do what they're told. But what we have learned from working with the more mature usage firms is a way to improve and to continually iterate, and that's why firms coming along now, we can guide them a little bit more closely, I feel, without needing to a little bit more of do what you're told is probably a little bit more easy, but we'll always have.
They
that
were
open
too
mind.
polite. They let us know best.
I'm still being too polite now. But yeah,
And I think I think I'm right in saying there are some elements of the system that are very flexible and can be tailored, and we've done this. And I'm interested. One of my colleagues was talking about this yesterday. Is that you should tailor it in the way that you want it to be used. And then you're right. There are some bits like no, you have to do it this way, because if you don't do it this way, then you're not going to be compliant. So don't do that.
yeah. No, that's fantastic. But I'm going to wrap up because I'm just conscious of time. We've got time. Okay, we're not too tight. But I thought Zoe's going to. 10. Fantastic. Okay, I'm going to do a couple more questions then, and then I'll check out the ones that have come in. I'd like to ask for anyone in the group here, if they've got measurable, quantifiable, data-driven improvements. So obviously early stages for some of you, but that would be a really nice thing for people, obviously. Data-driven individuals in the room and things that people can then replicate and quantify as they go through the journey. What kind of measurable, data-driven sort of stats have you been trying to capture to demonstrate the impact, the positive impact, hopefully, of the Inflow Workpapers product? Have you got any, or do you have any in mind for the future?
I'll do a really quick one, but it's not measurable at all, and it's not even data-driven, so it's completely not your question, is it? But don't
Do
put
what
your
you're
hand in-
told. She says she's going to do what you know.
Do what you want,
What can
yeah.
I say? But, I mean, in one of our exercises, it is about the making you think, that one of the jobs we were putting through the pilot, and we had a very almost too exciting conversation about assertion testing and revenue. But the upshot of it was that we cut our testing down from doing a sample of X ridiculous amounts that would have involved the client sitting with us for each one of them to not doing. And I think that was a real win of it's back to your thing about making you think and not just doing the same audit as you did last year, but with testing a few more because they're doing a few more.
Yeah, I'm the EQR on one of our listed companies, and the RI it's asked me about 4 times now whether I'm comfortable with the sample size of 2 that they come out with. Because they've done loads of other great work. I was like, yeah, I think so. Yeah, so let's go for it. And so that's definitely and we need to encourage our teams to be braver with that, because historically that you wouldn't have a sample size of 2 on revenue in particular. So it's like this, this is but actually we have all the tools now and we need to be using them. Interesting enough, we have the same sort of thing. We started off, everybody was using all the data analytics tools, and then we've seen that tail off now, and we want to now explore that. Well, why aren't people using it, right? What's happening there in the mentality of they're not using it and now using a bit more and doing less substantive work? Yeah.
That's a common theme we hear often. The revenue area, the ticking and bashing for days, and being able to bring that down through analytics and data, it's terrific advantage. I'm going to ask one more, and then I'll take the questions that have come in. To any of you who wants to take this one, but your end clients, your clients, how have they responded? Have they felt an impact by the change and the Workpapers transition, or maybe too early to tell for some of yours, but what's been the client reaction, or have they even noticed?
We always say to them, and we're very upfront about it. We don't charge them a separate fee for it, but we tell them that it's a significant investment and cost for us, and therefore it's in the fee. And they see Collaborate, of course. They like Collaborate, and we say, look, we're using this system behind the scenes, which you may not see. Going back to the cost point of view is interesting. We always say that if we didn't use these tools, the fee would be even higher, right? So there is that element of it. I think what's interesting, what we were really nervous about when we had first adopted, is that, well, how can we possibly get the client's data that early in advance in an audit? And so that's really changed the way that we approach our clients, and our clients interact with us now by giving us their data. I even had a potential client give me their data, their full data, and we just analysed it, and we're able to then do the pitch and do the fee quote based on what we know exactly what's in your general ledger. So that was quite interesting, and they were very pleased to do that.
Yeah. That's actually a new one to me. I've not heard that example before, but
It wasn't my idea, it was these guys' idea. But.
good idea. Alistair, did you want to add something on your experience, or too soon to tell?
It's a little bit too soon to tell, but I was just going to say that actually our clients are really used to Inflow because we've been using it for a long time, and they do really like it from the Collaborate side. We probably was the majority, but there was still probably 30-40% of clients that were not yet well trained enough to give us the data in an early stage. It's definitely helping us having earlier conversations to say we do need this, it's really important. They don't really see the software as such as Workpapers, but we are having some success at either getting data earlier, or we've started actually importing planning data, say month 10, month 11, so we can get, because we're conscious that we're having a big change, we want to get ourselves ahead of planning, not be doing it at the last minute. So we have actually started there kind of pulling month 10, month 11 data to enable us to get ahead. And I think that is starting to drive our clients' behaviour in a better way.
Yeah. I almost wonder as well, when it drives that behaviour, it might drive into the pricing behaviours as well, because if they can start delivering early and often, one of those options of the pricing could be beneficial if they can keep up their end of the bargain. But I'm going to pause there. I'll come back for one question from my list after just taking the questions that Anthony's bringing down. What have you got for us, Anthony?
Really weird coming downstairs with a microphone. You think you're going to break out into song, but I've managed to avoid that. So what's really handy is if you're going to ask a question, absolutely use that link if you can. But also, if you don't want to ask a question, if you just upvote some of the questions that are already on there, because then it gives me an idea of which ones we can ask first. So I've got a few questions to ask. Then we're gonna cut for a break, and then we'll come back after. But in the meantime. Right. James asked, how have you got on with the... I need my glasses. How have you got on with an assumed change of methodology change at the same time as a system change? So tech and methodology, how have you got on with that adoption?
I was talking about this with someone after this morning's meeting, and that's probably been the biggest question around the audit RI partner tables, or what about methodology, and which my rather sort of glib thing back is, well, you explain the methodology we're using at the moment, you say wedded to, because methodology becomes this big thing when you're changing, but actually no one knows what they're doing before.
Yeah, I think the biggest change for us was around, and again, it was in collaboration, was on the sort of our sample selection, calculator, if you like. Ours wasn't dramatically different from what Inflow had out of the box, but then we sort of probably got somewhere in the middle. I don't know, but it's again, that drives a lot of the methodology, doesn't it? So.
Yeah. Next one, Anthony.
I think the summary there is it's really easy. So that's great. We'll move on. How many No, I've already done that. No, I haven't. How many adjustments, like changes to procedures, are the panel members making to the methodology in use?
We're not really changing the methodology now. We're finding it much easier to tie in what we're doing with Inflow data analytics into the Workpapers we're using. We've actually been almost letting our team drive this, so we've been quite clear that as we adopt this, we actually think you're going to do the field work probably the same way you've done the field work previously. There may be some stuff we don't do, samples may change slightly, but in reality the tests are probably going to be the same at first. We expect as we're moving forward we are going to change our testing. As I say, people are already thinking of making it think about how they're auditing and are doing it naturally. So that it's starting to be a natural progression, I think.
So because your team have a digital data-driven mindset and are familiar with those tools,
yeah,
the
exactly.
procedures haven't yet evolved because obviously it's integrated methodology with the Workpapers solution and those tools. But you're already seeing that longer-term familiarity could drive more efficiency and behaviours.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's some of the better focus on the controls, which is probably it's helped us adopt I315 a lot better than we had done. That's actually helping us think, well, actually, we could test that rather than doing a sample of 100. We could actually look at that instead.
Yeah, very good.
I think one thing that we've got in our mindset at the point we are is, and one of my partners put this a lot better than me, but we had our old system, 1991, and because it'd been there since 1991, we'd adorned it, we'd changed it, we'd embellished it, and he had the picture of a Christmas tree that each year, you have new ornaments that your kids have made, and you made it look really pretty, but over time it's just got really cluttered and busy, and you can't remember what it is, and so we're quite keen actually not to encourage changing there and try and keep to what we're doing and making it work with us. That doesn't mean we won't ever, but for now we're trying to not to resist the temptation of sticking our old favourite ornament onto it.
Yeah, I mean, I think we would have struggled to write down what our methodology was, and we now are writing down what our methodology is now, and how we want it to look like. But it is a challenge around what do you want to do? Do you want to just do what you did last year? Do you want to do something a little bit different? So yeah. If you could, then yeah, you should really articulate what you want your methodology to be, and then adapt the content within Inflow to meet it. But that's not what we did. But I would have recommended it.
You must have made a really good point because the spotlight came on just as you said it. So
He had a good idea. But yeah, I'm going to really remember that, Caroline, that visual of the cluttered Christmas tree, because I have a 3-year-old who decorates our tree, and you cannot see branches for all the clutter that every ornament he can find goes on there. So that's going to be a visual I'll remember. But I'm going to look to Zoe at the front to see how many minutes we have left.
we're all good, very comfortable. Very comfortable. I think we're going to have a longer break as a
Enough
result.
time for questions?
I'm going to ask another question, and then maybe
Rob's
we
not
can give it out to
comfortable.
the audience.
I've got one more, so I want to make sure I leave.
You want to ask one more?
I've got one more on my list, but if you've got a few more, do a couple.
We'll do
of
one
yours.
more from here, and then we'll do that, and then we'll break.
Perfect.
Specifically to David and Alistair, has the quality of documentation increased, especially in areas of judgment and estimates?
Yes. I mean, we had what we used to like to be called a blank page approach. I mean, the idea was it started off as a blank page, and then the teams filled it in. So going back to the methodology point, was sometimes our people didn't know what to do, right? Because it was so blank. Wasn't very prescriptive about what to do. But now, of course, and we weren't, to be honest. And I did check whether there was any regulators in the room. I know I'm not counting Michael anymore. But I was around. We weren't doing some of the basic stuff in our old system very well. And at least the Inflow Workpapers is helping us do the basic stuff initially, all the time, every single time, which is definitely improving audit quality, and then giving us more time to be able to spend on the judgmental areas and documenting those things and auditing. Whilst I listened to what Michael was saying around what the social good, etc., of what auditing should be, a lot of it, unfortunately, is a documentation exercise in reality at the moment for us, and that's not going to change for a while. And it's how do you document the audit file efficiently and quickly to give you and your teams enough time to be able to spend on those judgments.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it's definitely helped us with documenting things like accounting estimates, controls, and all that kind of stuff. The testing that hangs around that's probably a work in progress for us. To be fair, we're probably still not quite documenting our thought process behind. We're documenting the client side better because the system is driving us to do that. We now need to work on that, kind of getting our thought process behind the testing and saying it's okay, better on paper.
Excellent. And Anthony,
I have one more popular question to ask,
Ooh,
and
well, if it's popular.
it's back to David again. So, did the quality reviews provide feedback on using data analytics over audit sampling? Also, were you able to invite the file reviewer into Inflow?
Certainly, one of the QAD reviewers, he was let's call it, he was a more mature user, more mature reviewer. He really didn't like it, to be honest. He couldn't quite get his head around some of the stuff, but his boss overruled him and said, we're not here to decide whether you can work your way around Inflow or not. But yeah, we had quite some debate around, I think the phrase they like to use, which is interesting, is the anchoring of some things, which is a new phrase I'd not heard before, but it's a thing. If you're using data analytics, how are you anchoring the data that you're using, which we've had to work on. But what was that second part of that question? It was about the I can't remember. Anyway, the guest user. That was a challenge. You're right. That was a challenge. The FRC's firewall is pretty strong, so it caused a few issues. That was largely the way that we've got it set up, as I said, with the SharePoint stuff. So eventually we gave them guest access, and it was fine, but they couldn't then access the SharePoint. But
Okay.
Excellent. Well, I did say I had one more that I wanted to ask, and this is one for each of you. Again, this session was to hopefully give people useful things to take away, so that's really the question. What would be your one piece of advice from a firm who is considering Workpapers or early on in their journey with the Workpapers product. What advice would you give that firm? Alistair, if you want to start.
Yeah. Well, apart from the fact I would say definitely do it, but I would definitely say it's that bring people with you, start the conversations with everybody as to the whys and sort of how you're going to go about going from where you are now to where you want to get to.
Well, I've already given one, haven't I, which is just do as you're told. But the other one, I think, is about the pace of change. And I kind of think of the graph that Mark had before about the adoption curve. And I kind of think that our team are in a similar one. We have it as it's a picture of a train, and you've got the people who are at the front of the train really, really wanting to push forward, and you've got the people at the back who actually just don't want to be, don't want to be on it at all. And it feels, we feel like in trying to keep that train together and keep everyone happy, we've been sat teetering on the getting over the edge, but not quite getting there. And I think my take is that actually at some point you've got to do that final nudge, push it over, and if it's too fast for the people at the back, that's for them to deal with.
Yeah, so don't let the laggards hold back everyone
Exactly.
who's ready and
Yeah.
raring to go.
Which doesn't sound, I'm sure there's a more collegiate way of putting it that I will find when I'm talking in a less enthusiastic audience.
Yeah, I mean, you're never going to take everybody on that journey, and we weren't able to, and some people haven't been able to cope and sort of are no longer with us, but most of them are, and to be honest, now as we're in 3 years in, it's for a minority of people, it's all they've ever known, right? It's only those old people that remember the old system, right? So actually, we did a big bang adoption, which worked for us because we didn't really have an alternative. But it did work for us. It was really hard in that first year, but at least we weren't doing 2 different audit systems at the same time, which and a longer pain. So it was a short, sharp pain, but it wasn't at least a dragged out process. And then it wasn't confusing for everybody. We had brand new juniors, and we just taught them one way to do the audit rather than 2 different ways.
Yeah, and that's a great summary because we have seen firms do it in a number of different ways, the big bang all-in one-time approach or more of a phased approach. So some things have worked well for other firms, but like you say, often for all the reasons you articulated, the all-in, let's kind of rip the plaster off or rip the Band-Aid off for our American friends, all at once is often a common approach. But I'm going to look to Anthony to make sure, have I kept us
Very
to
nervous
time?
about the time.
Yeah. I know.
Very nervous. You got somewhere to go? Or?
I got reservations. No, that was everything that I wanted
Perfectly
to cover in
timed.
this session.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you. Thank you to our speakers so far. Thank you especially to the panelists. That's a really nice, informal, relaxed session. Hopefully everyone enjoyed it.